Hello world, you're back with me, Mark P. Muzz.
Well, hello world.
33, 45, spin those records round. 33, 45.
You're with me, Mark P. Muzz.
Or Marky P, or Bad Boy Marky, or just plain Mark.
Couple of things before I start. Hopefully you noticed the little donate to me link on my last video. I'll put it on again for this one, and also my social media things as well, so that you can stay in touch with me and make suggestions for my videos and stuff like that. So this is a kind of follow-up video to my video that I made about the 50th anniversary remix of Sgt Pepper. I spent most of yesterday afternoon and a good part of the evening listening to Sgt Pepper about 8 times in various different incarnations, just trying to sort of go through really and see kind of what they've done to the new Sgt Pepper in terms of, you know, not just, oh, they've made a new stereo mix and they've put the voices in different places and instruments in different places and stuff like that on the stereo spectrum, which they've done. They have done that, so, you know, but what else is kind of missing from it, as it were? Okay, a little bit of a backstory to Sgt Pepper on CD. As you know, these albums were released in the 60s and everything was on vinyl in those days. The first music cassette came out in 1967. It was Sgt Pepper on a cassette with no Dolby and a tiny wee excuse for a little bit of artwork inside, but that was it. That came out in 1967, but vinyl was the dominant format, okay? And more importantly, mono vinyl. And a few things weren't in place, even on vinyl as we know them, okay? In the early 60s, there was no standard equalization curve. If you try and cut a record with the bass and treble frequencies as they are on the master, then your stylus, your home stylus, will have a hard job playing the record. So what they tended to do was cut the bass frequencies slightly and boost the treble frequencies slightly as well, to make this EQ curve, which made it easier for the cutting stylus to cut the treble grooves and the bass grooves without undue stress. And also bass grooves in particular take an awful lot of physical space on the record, and treble frequencies take hardly any. So if you were to cut it straight, as it were, then you would find that you would have an overtly bassy record with hardly any treble frequencies. So that's the reason why there's a treble boost and a bass cut. And on replay, your hardware should, provided that it's better than a Crosley and your hardware is fitted with a magnetic cartridge, a moving magnet cartridge or a moving coil cartridge, the amplifier socket that's plugged into, or the phono stage, will correct that curve for you, okay, because it's a standardized thing, okay. But in the 60s that hadn't happened, and I mean Sgt Pepper may have been cut with the standard curve, which is called the RIAA curve. That's the Recording Industry Association of America. But it may not have been, because every record company had their own recipe, as it were, for doing that EQ curve. And so on modern record players, which are designed for correcting the RIAA curve, it may sound different from a record company or a record label who didn't follow that RIAA recipe. Okay, but by the 70s things had got standardized, so one of the things that would have been done in the 70s would be to cut the records according to the RIAA curve, which would make them sound slightly different. Also, of course, in the 1960s the dominant format for anything, whether it was singles or albums, especially in the UK, was mono. The Americans got wind of stereo and tried to release things in stereo before a lot of bands in the UK were ready to make that move. And so Sgt Pepper was conceived as a mono album. And all of the little foibles, because I'm going to mention a lot of anomalies in this in this video, and a lot of these things would not have been audible. In fact, I've been and checked, and were not, you know, they were there, but they just weren't quite so audible in this big melting pot that was mono. Okay, the stereo mixes were done as a kind of, oh god, we've got to mix the album in stereo, have we? Those are sort of, that's paraphrasing Geoff Emerick. I watched a video, ABC, the news station in Australia, did interviews with Geoff Emerick and Richard Lush to kind of coincide with this 50th anniversary remix of Sgt Pepper. Geoff Emerick was not very polite about it. I think the word disgusted was what he used, and he can only listen to mono versions of the album because for him you weren't supposed to be able to identify every single little detail, because the whole thing was this huge melting pot. Okay, and the thing about the stereo mixes of the 1960s, as you probably well know, you've probably all heard them, but a lot of them would have vocals maybe panned entirely to the left or panned entirely to the right, or, you know, not quite in the centre, and bass instruments which are normally locked to the centre because the ear has trouble telling where bass frequencies come from, so you're best leaving that in the centre. And same with the drum kit. Okay, the kick drum goes in the centre, and you may have other drums in a particular kind of stereo set out, but drums in those days were invariably recorded in mono. So it wouldn't, if you were going to place the drum kit somewhere on a stereo spectrum, it would be occupying its tiny little portion of the thing rather than the spread of the drums that we're used to today. So yeah, the RIAA curve was something that got standardised in the 70s, and the Beatles albums would have been re-EQ'd, as it were, for the 70s market. But again, the overall sound would have been the same in terms of stereo positioning and treble and bass balance and stuff like that. It was all done basically to sound okay on 1970s record players, whereas the earlier ones were cut to sound okay on 1960s teenage record players, which would have been dancette style things, like the ones that could be picked up with a suitcase handle and have one mono speaker in the front, basically, and a very sort of tinny ceramic cartridge fitted to them. So come the 80s and the CD revolution, well, I suppose it wasn't really a revolution, and it wasn't perfect sound or anything like that. And George Martin was happily ensconced in his studios in Montserrat because his Air company had acquired studios in Montserrat, and one day he got wind of the fact that EMI, who he didn't work for at the time because he went freelance in the mid-1960s, but EMI had decided to release the Beatles catalogue on CD, and he got wind of the fact that the first four, Please Please Me, With the Beatles, Hard Day's Night and Beatles for Sale, were going to be released, and he went up to the bosses and said, like hell are you, you know, that, and when he found out that they were going to be in stereo as well, he said, like hell are you going to release those albums in stereo, because stereo in those days was an afterthought, and to put not too fine a point on it, particularly the first two of those albums, Please Please Me and With the Beatles, the stereo positioning was crap, because essentially they could only record on 2 tracks in those days. They didn't even have 4-track recording in 1962 and 1963. Well, I Want to Hold Your Hand was the first Beatles recording to be recorded on 4-track tape. And you'll notice that from then onwards, the stereo positioning gets an awful lot better. And in fact, I don't think Hard Day's Night and For Sale have got bad stereo mixes, even in their original sort of connotations. And so EMI relented and they said, right, well, we'll release the mono versions then. And George Martin had no input other than the fact that he'd gone in and he said, right, well, look, anything else you do, I want to have a look at it first, because I don't want any old thing going out with my producer credit under it, because it'll sound awful on CD. Because CD has its own sonic characteristics, which George Martin wanted to make sure would sound their best with the mixes. And so he then took the next 4, which were Help, Rubber Soul, Revolver and Sgt Pepper, and that 4 was released as a bundle a little while. So I think we're still talking 1987. Basically, he tampered with those stereo mixes. Okay, I kind of got an idea of how much yesterday when I found, because I basically, I don't know really what's in my iTunes library, but I know that I did a transfer at one stage for a friend of Beatles 1967 to 1970. I also ripped to my iTunes. This is the only copy of Sgt Pepper on CD that I have. This is the first 1987 one. It was also one of the first ones I bought. And you can see it's a little bit battered now, but it's the original Sgt Pepper CD, and it's actually very nice, okay? But the stereo positioning, although it's still sort of, there's still things hard left and hard right that shouldn't be, they're not as hard left and hard right as they were, okay? On my 1967 to 70 thing, I listened to With a Little Help from My Friends, and Ringo is panned very hard left, and there's quite a lot of kind of reverberant empty space kind of in the middle kind of thing. That's been changed slightly, okay? It's still Ringo on the left and quite a lot of reverberant space, but it sounds better, okay? It's not quite as radical as it was in the 60s, because George Martin knew that people in the 60s who had stereo things in their house, they would likely be, it wouldn't be the kids in the house that had a stereo, it would be the parents, and presumably the lady of the house would have had a choice in it as well and wouldn't want some ugly great thing. So in terms of stereo things, you even got TVs with them as well, but they were these massive great sideboardy style contraptions, and again they would still have a ceramic cartridge on them, a lot of them. Some of them would have had magnetic ones on in the later years, but in the early 60s they'd have had ceramic cartridges on them, and there'd be speakers built into the sideboards that used to honk. And so having that sort of wide stereo, or not, well, I say that the wide stereo was for the fact that these speaker things in these sort of sideboard style furniture pieces of thing were often not far enough apart, and they certainly were not sort of positioned. You need to toe in speakers slightly so that they're sort of pointing diagonally at one another, so that the sound comes out and makes a triangle kind of thing. With the listener, so you have listener, speaker, speaker, like that, and the sound goes like that as a diagonal kind of thing. You probably can't see very well with my hands, but that is That is not what these things were. And so the mixes were designed to flatter those. So yes, you've got voices over there because that's what stereo is, and it kind of gave a better stereo effect for those things. All right. So yeah, the stereo had been tampered with ever so slightly. He also had to use things like 80s style reverb to make up for the fact that reverb that was added post recording, quite often the Beatles would record with the reverb already in place. John Lennon, for example, never liked his voice without any kind of reverb on it. So he always insisted on hearing the reverb in his headphones, and the only way you could do that in those days was to actually record it to tape at the same time. Normally, the standard procedure nowadays is to record everything what we call dry, with no reverb, no effects on it at all, and then sort of in post, as it were, in the editing and mixing stage, you would add on any effects and reverbs and delays and everything else that you wanted. Okay, but so for anything that was added post the recording, George had to use 80s style reverb effect units for, because obviously the old things were long dead and defunct kind of thing. So yes, there is a different sound to them. It's slightly different, okay, but it's actually nice. I mean, I've got a fair few of those 80s ones, and if you can get them, because people slag them off and whatever, but by the time that they slagged them off, people kind of got the idea that, the new 2009 ones were coming out that were in 24-bit. And that was the only reason why they were being slagged off, because they were done on old 80s technology, but they were done well on old 80s technology. It wasn't like I've just been in my friend's car and they were playing Bryan Adams, Best of Bryan Adams or something like that on their CD player. And it just sounded, the typical overblown 80s gated drums and things like that, and you haven't got anything like that. It still sounds like the 1960s, put it this way, and really nice. Okay, and in particular this album, this one is done very, very well indeed, and it holds faithful to everything else that was in that stereo mix, but has been just slightly sort of tampered with to make it flatter 80s CD players, which were in those days 16-bit 44, and that is still the standard for CD. Okay, it's still the standard for downloads and Spotify and stuff like that, except that downloads and Spotify tend to use file formats which throw away a lot of that data. So it's sad but true that even 1644 WAVs and AV files are considered high resolution formats on the internet, and it's just not true. Nowadays we've got 24-bit 96 kilohertz, which is the standard for DVD, and 24192, which was the standard for things like SACD, I think, and DVD audio, all used much higher sampling rates and bit rates to replay music. But yeah, it's nice. Okay, the 2009 masters came out, or remasters came out on CD in 2009, obviously, because otherwise they wouldn't be the 2009 remasters now, would they? Where they've been transferred to 24-bit. And in the meantime, some sort of odd things had happened. Okay, we'd got things like the Yellow Submarine Songtrack. The Yellow Submarine Songtrack came out, I think, in 1999. And what it was essentially, like when I ranked my Beatles albums a few months ago, one of the things I said was that nobody really liked Yellow Submarine. And nobody really did. Okay? Basically, the film soundtrack had loads of Beatles songs in it, but the actual album was one side of half-baked, new-ish kind of Beatles songs, although only a Northern Song was recorded at the same time as part of the Sgt Pepper sessions, for example. And the other side was George Martin instrumentals, and people were a bit hacked off with that, I think, and it doesn't really sort of rank in anyone's favourites. But this, in 1999, they actually released a Songtrack, which was essentially all of the Beatles songs that appeared in the film Yellow Submarine, with none of the George Martin instrumentals, and all of them have been treated to stereo remixes. Okay, and so as part of that, whereas George Martin left these things alone, other people who kind of succeeded in George Martin's line, particularly his son, who also produced the Lush CD as well, played around with those stereo things, because you can nowadays. Okay, you can actually quite reliably, even in a track of bass guitar, drums and vocals, you can isolate the voice, and then you can record that voice bit onto another track and pan that where you want. So you could have the voices in the centre if you wanted to, which is essentially what they've done with the new Sgt Pepper remix, but it was first done on that Yellow Submarine Songtrack. But most people actually like the Beatles albums as they were in the 60s, and there are certain things about them, certain little mistakes and little clicks. I'm not talking about clicks and pops that you hear as an everyday part of playing a record. I'm talking about clicks and pops that are actually on the tapes because, for example, someone had plugged a guitar in or unplugged a guitar, and you've got this funny buzzy noise as it went, and all those kind of little things and all the little mistakes that were on there all make up the sonic picture, which is why Geoff Emerick, or one of the reasons why Geoff Emerick was saying, look, this is why that mono mix of Sgt Pepper, in fact the mono mixes of all the Beatles albums that are in mono, probably up to the White Album, they beat the stereo versions out of the water, because a lot of those little buzzes and things, they're there and we can feel them there on a subliminal level, but they are hidden by the fact that everything's all coming from the centre mono kind of soundstage, as it were. Okay, so I went through, now I've on a fair few of my Beatles videos, I've talked about the Beatles Anomalies website. It's run by someone called Mike Brown, and what I've got here are all of the anomalies that are on Sgt Pepper, but they're not actually all the anomalies, because I've spotted a few more. Most of them can be heard on this stereo remix. Some of them I really can't hear, but they're what make the album. Okay, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to read you some of these. Okay, where there are great big discussions and stuff, I'm not going to go through all of those, but certainly I'll tell you what's on there. Okay, I take very little credit for it, other than that I tried to see which ones I could hear on the new deluxe mix, where something says it's been fixed in Yellow Submarine Remastered, because these were basically this mix. That's where most of the anomalies have come from. They weren't introduced by the CD. They were there, but they were copied over faithfully. Okay, in the very act of cleaning everything up and stuff like that, I don't necessarily think it does the music a huge amount of favours. There are some things about the new deluxe remix that take your breath away. I'll tell you one now. Okay, as you're listening to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, in sort of, there's basically a part A, which is the picture yourself on the boat on a river bit, and the part B's with the cellophane flowers of yellow and green, which is a different tune, and then you've got the chorus, which is part C, I suppose. So you've got an A, a B and a C, and when part B comes in the first time, which is cellophane flowers of yellow and green, it's like this kind of burst of reverb just sort of comes and lands and settles on top of the sound, and it just shimmers. And you know, I mean, let's make no mistake, although Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds was not an acronym for LSD, certainly the feel of the music was meant to be. okay? And as that comes down and it shimmers, I mean, I don't experiment with illegal substances and never have done, so so I don't know, but I would assume that if you were, then that would just sort of kind of, you know, it would just take you sort of millions of miles away in your imagination, and you know it's just gorgeous. It's just absolutely gorgeous. But you know, yes, there are, you know, the fact that they have over cleaned it. This is the point that I'm making. They've over cleaned it, and you know, some of the things weren't necessarily because it was fixed for that mix. If it was fixed in Yellow Submarine Remastered, it was fixed, and it would have been fixed for the 2009 mixes, and it would have been I'm talking about CD and digital ones here. Certainly the mono box set was basically whatever was on the original master tapes was transferred without a digital stage onto the records, and that's why the new mono box set just sounds gorgeous. Okay, but anyway, so let's start with Sgt Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Okay, and so, you know, these are Mike Brown's Anomalies, and I'll kind of tell you where I've spotted one or two as well. Okay, something that can be heard in all the mixes at the beginning in the crowd noise between 9 and 10 seconds. You can hear something that says "Roll over, boys" or "Roll over, Morris," heavily reverbed just before the music starts, and it sounds like Paul's voice. I actually think I've heard that somewhere else. I may be wrong about this, and maybe I should get my anthology out, but I'm sure that on Anthology 2, I think there are some live recordings on there, and I think that, because I know that they took, because this is another thing I did, I went through and tried to trace it throughout, to see who was there for the mixing sessions, because I'm fed up with another thing that I'm fed up with. I'll get on with it. But yeah, I know that they took crowd noises from some of their concerts, as well as from the Royal Albert Hall and the Queen Elizabeth Hall as well, and also from the orchestral section. They recorded some of the kind of studio chatter and the instruments tuning up and stuff, and a lot of that has been overdubbed onto Sgt Pepper to make all the crowd noises. And I think that "Roll over, Morris" or "Roll over, boys" is like "Roll over, boys," like that. You can hear it at the start of one of their live concert things. Okay. There then follows a little bit of chat where people say that it's German or French, but the Beatles did not speak German or French, so no, wouldn't have thought so. At 26 seconds, just at the end of Sgt Pepper Taught the Band to Play, the drum beat is cut short on the just underneath the word play. It's minute, but it is, okay, and it's audible. Okay, now at 54 to 55 seconds, the lead guitar begins a little bit early, so this is after the brass session. There's a quick sort of accidental guitar note, and Paul says "yow," which you can just about hear very, very faintly. Okay, after that lead guitar note, it starts a bit early. Okay, at 1 minute 35 seconds, this is "You're such a lovely audience, we'd like to take you home with us." The word "us" is spoken in a low voice, somewhat separate from the harmonies. Ringo might be doing a low harmony and got one word out of time or out of tune, I would have thought. And there's also a shout at that point, which I noticed. And I noticed that actually when listening to the new remix. Just before the second verse starts, I don't really want to stop the show, there's sounds like there's a maraca, but there's also a bump and a shake as well underneath it, which could be a mic stand being hit by accident, something like that. The crowd noise at 1 minute 46 seconds. The left channel fades down and straight back up. Might have been because there wasn't enough stock recording of clapping to fill the space required. And it was fixed in Yellow Submarine Remastered. Probably just by getting another bit of crowd noise and flying it in. But that is not audible, most definitely not audible on the new deluxe remix. And it's probably not audible on the 2009 stereo either, because it was fixed in Yellow Submarine Remastered. In the last line of the song, the one and only Billy Shears and Sgt Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, there's an edit, because actually, I think Paul McCartney is supposed to say and Sgt Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, but what you actually get is Sgt Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And again, in the new mix, they've actually cut that off there. Okay, so it's the one and only Billy Shears, Sgt Pepper's, and it comes in and it's slightly kind of a little bit of a jolt there in Paul's vocals, because I think the "and" of "and" has been cut off. And then the right channel, the guitar ends very abruptly as if edited off. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And this is why I said in the last video, when you're listening to the mono mix, what you actually get at that point is a bit of overdubbed guitar that has been flown in to cover the fact that the guitar has been cut off, and it's like like that, and it kind of jumps out at you. And I said I couldn't hear that on the new stereo remix. I believe that it is there because I've listened to it on headphones since then. I believe it's there, but it's sort of somewhere over to the right, and it's nowhere near as prominent. It doesn't jump out at you, okay? But that was covering the fact that the other guitar had its end of it cut off very abruptly, and you can hear that in stereo mixes, including this one. But you know, if you've got any stereo mixes pre-2009, it will be on there as well. Okay, so we'll get to with a little help from my friends. In the centre, you're supposed to hear some loud tweets between the word Billy, but actually this is where they use crowd noise from one of the Beatles concerts at the Hollywood Bowl, I think, because that was recorded, obviously, when the Beatles were current as a group, but it was only released in 1977, so you know most people hadn't heard it by then. But apparently during the word Billy, that bit there's supposed to be some loud tweets, which I've never heard, has to be said. At 8 seconds, there's a noticeable increase in mains hum as the fader opens for Paul's bass. You can just about hear that in the mono version. When I say the mono version here, by the way, the thing I listened to yesterday was the first pressing on headphones, because I've got it ripped into my iTunes library. I made a copy of it for someone on my old RIAA P5. I couldn't hear, well, I could hear it just about, but on the stereo mixes, or at least, you know, anything pre-deluxe, you can hear it, particularly on this one. Okay, and again, that mains hum, we're used to it. We're used to it. Take it away, and it suddenly sounds different and weird to us. You know, you know, it's not quite right. We need that mains hum. Under the word lend, as in lend me your ear and I'll sing you a song, a voice says one. I can just about make that out. And I can just about make that out in the mono and the new remixy bits as well, I think. It's very, very, very faint. Okay? Don't know why they say one, but they do. Okay? In the drums, the bit that goes dum 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 ba dum dum boom boom ba dum, that little bit there's a little bit of confusion. It sounds like there's some heavily reverbed talking or something that goes on behind those drums, and it's there. I think I don't think you would ever get rid of that without erasing half the solo, but obviously someone's voice has been picked up from somewhere, because the drums were so heavily reverberated, and it's kind of got confused and whatever in the mix. At 1:45, the rhythm guitar misses a chord, continuing on the same chord for too many beats. Well, that's going to be there regardless. I don't think you're going to chop off someone's, guitar chord there. So yeah, again, it's one that I can't really pick up on myself, again, because we're so used to it. We're so used to all the mistakes that they made, and, it would be the same with other groups. Bjorn of ABBA once said, I don't care if there's the odd mistake on a record. What I want, the odd rhythm accuracy or whatever, what I want is the overall thing to sound fantastic. Okay? And I think, if there was a slight fluff there, it was covered up, and, we're used to it. So, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. I think it's in what the first "Do You Need Anybody" chorus there. Okay, 2 minutes and 4 seconds. I think this is in the last chorus of With a Little Help, in the right channel. Well, it won't be in the right channel now if you've got the new mix, but certainly in the right channel of any other normal stereo mix. Crackles in the bass line. Bad lead connector. Yes, you can hear it. It was fixed in Yellow Submarine Remastered, so you won't hear it on the new mixes. 2:29. Ringo admits that he wasn't confident about that high note at the end. In fact, he wasn't. I think he had to do that. If you believe Richard Lush. If you believe Richard Lush, Ringo was asked to do that vocal, and they'd been going all night, because they quite often sessions started late in the evening and went on throughout the early hours of the morning, and it was 6 a.m. and Ringo was going to sing his With a Little Help from My Friends bit, and he needed about 15 or so attempts at trying to get that high note at the end, and he admits that he wasn't confident about it. And here you can hear an edit to join on a successful attempt at the last phrase, beginning with the words, yes, I get by with a little help from my friends with a little. And the yes bit, the reason why it goes, yes, I get by, is because in the middle of that bit, that's an edit, okay, and the sound, actually, the volume of it is slightly different. They did try and fix it, but again, it's one of those things that we're just used to Ringo's phrasing there, okay. So if I was to sort of play it away on my piano or whatever, and we'd all get to the end and we'd all go, yes, I get by, because that's what it was. But it was never ever sung like that. It was an edit. So that Ringo's last note could be put on there, whatever, okay. And apparently there's a soft ooh on the end of the backing vocals on that word yes as well, which you can hear again because the backing vocals are, I think they're in a different channel on the normal stereo mix, and you can hear there's a soft ooh there as well. And something else that I've never heard before, and that's over the end chord, someone says something extremely faint, maybe the word friends. Okay, so now we come to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Okay, and the first anomaly that in Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds that I've spotted, and it is definitely on here, and I've played it over and over again, and it's definitely here. At 5 seconds in, during the introduction, bum 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 bum, in that bit there, just before John goes up to the microphone to say, "Picture yourself in a boat on a river," the microphone stand wobbles, or he gulps, or a bit of both, but you can hear a kind of knocky sound just before it starts. Okay. 13 seconds apparently in the left channel there's a kick, okay, a click, sorry, again it's something I've not really heard. I listen on vinyl, a click's a click. Do you know what I mean? Whether it's a click that was meant to be there or a click because of a bit of static on the record or something, a click's a click. So it's one click in amongst many. It's like trying to find one leaf in a forest. Do you know what I mean? At 45 seconds, though, it says there's a cough. It's also been suggested that this is Ringo's hi-hat banging together more loudly and sibilantly than expected, possibly as a result of treading on the pedal too. Well, the hi-hat on the word sun is louder. This is the picture the girl with the sun in her eyes and she's gone. And on the word sun, the hi-hat is a bit louder than in the others and sticks out a bit. But there is a cough apparently on the word in, which again was fixed in Yellow Submarine remastered. So it won't be on the newer mixes, but yes, there is something that happens at that point. You can tell that whether I would necessarily identify it as a cough, I wouldn't know, but there's some sort of sploshy kind of sound there after that, the word sun, after that hi-hat goes like that. And yeah. Now, just before the first chorus, at 50 seconds, just before we get to Lucy in the sky, boom, 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 you get a burst of electric guitar, which comes in out of place before that. Okay, that is there. Okay, 1 minute 15 seconds. I can hear a shout, not listed on the anomalies on the website. I'll put the website link down below as well. John sings 1 minute 32 seconds. John sings "Grow so incredibly high," and then a few seconds after that, with very little reverb, or at least it's different reverb from before, you hear a "I," which again was fixed in Yellow Submarine remastered, but we're used to it. We're used to it. It's on the mixes. But yeah, it's a previous vocal take or something like that that hadn't been properly erased. And so there is a leftover I, a couple of seconds, at 1 minute 32 seconds, just after that line. Okay, see if you can hear it. 154 to 156, the lead guitar drops out in the right channel. Definitely does. For some, I believe that this is somewhere in one of the choruses. The lead guitar just goes dead for a second. At 2 minutes 33 seconds, there is definitely a click in the right hand channel, which I heard listening to this. At 2 minutes 34, Paul sings harmony on the lu syllable in Lucy. This is the final chorus now. Okay, Paul's made a harmonic mistake, and he corrects it to sing in unison, because you'll notice that each time that Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is repeated, it builds up. Okay, so the first time it's just John and Paul singing the same thing, and then Paul breaks out into harmonies, and then and the whole thing kind of builds up over the 3 repetitions of that line. Okay, and at 2 minutes 53 seconds, there's a burst of reverb after the ah that doesn't occur on other ahs, and then just as the song's fading out, there's again, they call it here a print through of an ah that's audible in the centre. Also an accidental sharp note miskey of the song that begins on the word ah, which again was fixed in Yellow Submarine remastered. By fixed in Yellow Submarine remastered, sometimes they even mean that it just sounds even weirder without it. You know. Getting better. This is brilliant for anomalies. Getting better is over that chunk bits in the introduction. You can hear someone counting in, and there's other talking as well going on at the same time. The word teachers has a double track sound to it, as if an overlapped edit was performed. Never heard that, but apparently, yeah, it might have been to fix an edit or something like that, basically, and they've overlapped, and you've got the teach syllable of teachers has a slightly kind of double tracked sound to it. Okay, and then filling me up with your rules. There's distortion on the word up. There's most definitely distortion on the word up. You can hear it goes grainy and nasty at that point. Okay, And then in the word better, there's in the first bit, I got to admit it's getting better. That first better that you hear in that first chorus, there's an edit in the middle, so it's the t kind of syllable is kind of splashed and unclear, and that's an edit point there. In the right hand channel, someone shouts better under Paul's vocals at 34 seconds. I don't think I heard that. Okay, most definitely in the down, 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 little introduction before the second verse, the bit before me used to be angry young man. Beg your pardon. That's better. There's a rising whistle and a click. It goes. It sounds like a radio at that point. They may have wanted it there, but it's there. Okay. Paul makes a verbal slip at 56 seconds. You gave me the word, I finally heard. You're doing the best that I can. You're doing the best that I can. Doesn't make sense kind of thing, but again, goes by. We're used to it. Then there's some odd sounds. There's a shout after you're doing the best that I can. A minute long. So a minute into the song, there's a shout. They then detail some odd sounds which they describe as clicking, maybe a faulty amplifier or cable, which comes in a few places within that second minute there. Okay. Now on the words can't get no worse, and this will be in the second chorus. The electric piano and cymbal stroke hi-hat do a double skip on the left side as if it's a faulty edit. Doesn't sound intentional. Yes, you can hear the cymbal sort of goes sort of thing like that instead of playing it goes kind of out of time there. It's minute. All of these things really are minute, or they're so faint that you really have to be listening ever so closely, but they're there. They're there. And to clean them up is kind of, you know, taking away the Sgt Pepper that we know. Right, at 1:56 to 50 seconds, again after the word can, okay, in this will be in sort of getting towards the end now. I'm doing that at the end of verse 3. So I used to be cruel to my woman. I kept her apart from the things that she loved. Man, I was mean, but I'm changing my scene, and I'm doing the best that I can. Ooh. And there's talking after the word can. And at 2:37 seconds in the left-hand channel. Okay, this has been cleaned up on the new mix. I listened to it on headphones. I actually copied it to a tape so that I could plug my headphones into my tape deck. It has been cleaned up. The way that it's been cleaned up is that most of the backing track for Getting Better is in the left channel. Okay, and it as it's fading out, the chung 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 chung, several instruments all die away at once, leaving you with a dead space. And you can hear that at 2 minutes 37 seconds in. It's right as the song fades out. You'll hear that there are instruments still playing in the right channel, but and you know, sort of reverb is still hanging around in the air. But your left ear, if you're listening on headphones, your left ear will go dead. Okay, and that's basically because those instruments have dropped out of the mix. But because they've managed to somehow or other separate them so that they're not all in the same channel, when it dies down, it's a lot more gradual on the newer mix. Right, fixing a hole. Right. At 34 seconds, I'm feeling the cracks that ran through the door and kept my mind from wandering where it will go. And on the words will go, Paul's voice does what happened to my voice a second ago. Got a frog in the throat kind of thing. Cracks slightly, ever so slightly. Again, you can hear it in stereo because of all the separation. In mono, it would have just blended in. It's barely noticeable on the mono one. It's obviously there because Paul sang it, but they've made a better job of covering it up. At the tail end of the guitar sounds like a long slide down at the frets. This is at 42 seconds. Okay, so this would be during that silly people laugh at me, they worry me, they never win. And you can hear this lovely slide down, like a sort of purring sound. Again, probably not an anomaly, that one. That's probably there, and you know they left it there because it's nice. Now, can I read my own writing here? Yep, another click at 1 minute 6 seconds. But I, can't be asked with the clicks really. But at 1 minute 11 seconds. On again another where it will go. There's a leftover bit, a bit like the I in High in Lucy, where there was a leftover bit from an earlier take. There's a leftover bit of reverb where will go kind of slides down. Okay, where it will go, like that sort of thing. 1 minute 11 seconds. Okay, at 1 minute 32 seconds. Oh, another blooming click. But that's very abrupt. Yeah, as the guitar solo ends, you can hear again, because they only have 4 tracks. So if you had something else that was meant to be on say track 4, for example, right, you're playing the guitar solo. Okay, you would have to get rid of that before you erased what else was on track 4. You would have to quickly unplug that guitar so that it doesn't cover up what else is going to come on there, and you would hear that. Okay, and so obviously they had a noisy guitar plug, and someone's pulled it out, and it's made a kind of bizarre sound at the end of that, which I'm sure they probably weren't too bothered about, except that in the new remix, they've chopped off the very last note of that guitar solo. So the very nth bit of that guitar solo is now chopped off so that you can't hear the plug being pulled out, and it kind of finishes very abruptly. Okay. Either way, it's an anomaly whether you've got whether you've chopped the end of the note off, as they've done, in 2017, or whether or not they've just pulled the plug out. Okay. At 2009 to 2013, Paul makes a few flubs on the guitar, some slight timing errors, okay, which make it go, this is in the fixing a hole where the rain gets in, stops my mind from wandering, where it will go, and in those bits, where it will go, Paul's boom, 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 and he kind of flubs the bass guitar. Now, knowing that Paul McCartney flubbed, if he spent about 3 hours on his own getting the bass line perfect for With a Little Help from My Friends. That's the sort of meticulous kind of person that he is. So if he flubs a note, okay, either they're in a rush to complete it, hence, some of the flubs on Rubber Soul, for example, which was a real headache to try and get ready, and songs just sort of pulled out from, the basement cupboard kind of thing, to think, oh, what the hell else can we record on it to get 14 songs and get it out before Christmas? They weren't in that kind of hurry for this. So Paul was just spending his time doing things. So if he flubbed a few notes, he must have thought, oh, sounds all right. And it does. At this point, where it will go. The fact, reggae guitarists will quite often do it deliberately. They'll knock themselves out of time just for a bar, maybe, where it just goes, and literally for 4 seconds you can hear this same thing, and again, thinking of the substances, it would sound great. I think if you were tripping away. Okay, there's a little bit of out of phase stuff now on this website. It's actually quite good because occasionally, I mean, they don't do it for all the anomalies, but occasionally they give you a link to go and listen for yourself. Okay, and apparently, if in out of phase stereo, if you listen towards the end, the backing vocals are slightly different, maybe from an earlier take. There's a bit of leftover again from an earlier take, and you can hear gets in, stops my mind, which is different. Okay, somewhere over to the left there's a leakage of a previous guide vocal where the phrasing was different because the double track lead doesn't cause this. Okay, and as Fixing a Hole finishes at 2 minutes 22 seconds, this is one of my anomalies that I spotted. Again, a whiny downward guitar slide, which is lovely. It's really nice. Okay, now She's Leaving Home. She's Leaving Home was originally recorded in the key of E major. I know, I checked it. Okay, I didn't have to listen to someone on YouTube telling me. I know it's in E major. That's the key that it was recorded in. On the original stereo mix, which this is, She's Leaving Home was played in E major. Okay, probably because somebody forgot to when they made the stereo mix, someone forgot to speed the tape deck up. Okay, Paul wanted the tape deck sped up. When I'm 64, and was another case in point where Paul wasn't satisfied with an original mono mix of it because he thought that it could do with being sped up a bit, because that's what they were doing. Speed it up, slow it down. Put some ADT on it, put some reverb on it, mic it in a different way, kind of thing, because everything was supposed to be different in those days. Because this was Sgt Pepper's band, it wasn't them, and they and that concept was heavily in place by the time of She's Leaving Home. Okay, Paul wanted it sped up, so the fact that it wasn't sped up on the stereo mix must have been quite a consternation to a lot of Beatles fans from the 60s. Okay, so again, the anomalies on She's Leaving Home, and there aren't that many, most of them are down to things that would normally happen when you get a group of string players, a real live string quartet or quintet, into your room with a harp as well. You will hear stools creaking, like that creaks. You will hear the bow making sort of extra kind of scrapey noises, or if you've muted a string, you'll hear a kind of twangy sort of stuff, and it's normal. It's what happens in classical music, in a classical concert, and so a lot of the anomalies there are normal. Okay, there are one or two, however, which, because they were sped up, they don't show up quite as much as they do in the slightly slower She's Leaving Home in E major. Okay, at 14 to 15 seconds, and we are now talking about the slower version, so the timings on this will be slightly different, but you hear a nice deep breath from Paul. Okay, Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day begins. You hear a great big breath from Paul there. Okay, more clicking from the bodies of instruments, etc. and so forth. At 1 minute 17 seconds, which is one of the first climax in the song. She's leaving home after living alone for so many years. Bye bye. There's a gap there, and then everything's all supposed to come in together, except that possibly due to an edit or something, it doesn't quite happen. And so father snores as his wife gets into her dressing gown. That whole bit comes in an nth of a second late, and you can hear the beginning parts of the string quartet have been cut off. Okay, maybe they were recorded at slightly different times. I know that I've done things before where I've recorded the piano part, gone and had dinner, come back and then done the second verse and then put them together. And if you don't put them together quite at the right moment, it's going to sound weird. And it sounds like something of that nature has happened, and it also happens just before the final coda. And the things that really kind of stick out to me, which don't again stick out so much on the F major one because it was all sped up so that you can't hear it quite so clearly, but standing alone at the top of the stairs, Paul kind of his p kind of reacted adversely to a microphone. You see, when you see people sing, they quite often have a shield in front of the microphone to kind of absorb any sort of frequencies that are going to spit at you like s and p and b like that, and you've got a pop against the microphone on top of the stairs. Standing alone at the top of the stairs. And what did we do that was wrong? We didn't know it was wrong. In the she is having fun bits, in the backing vocals, the k on the end of wrong, it's a kind of scousy Liverpudlian thing to kind of do, but it really shows up. And on the original stereo, you've got the backing vocals, you've got some vocals on the right hand side and some sort of mid-left kind of thing, and the first time you hear it, it's on the right hand side. What did we do that was wrong? Then on the left hand side, we didn't know it was wrong. It's just a bit of fun, people, just a bit of fun. Being for the benefit of Mr. Kite, for the benefit of Mr. Kite, there will be a show tonight on trampoline. Dum da dum da dum. Sniff at 43 seconds. That's another one that I noticed. Now, this is one anomaly that has, thankfully, it's escaped even the busybodies in Giles Martin's production team of EMI sort of 2017. On the word, this is K&H, assure the public their production will be second to none. There's an accidental cymbal strike, which again in the mono mix gets hidden away. In this mix, it's kind of to the left, I believe, but on the 2017 mix, it's right dead centre, because it must have somehow or other found its way onto John Lennon's microphone. A drum cymbal that was either hit accidentally or put there afterwards like a bit of plaster to cover a duff drum note in the first place. Okay, if Ringo forgot to hit a cymbal on the word production, and they really thought, yeah, we ought to have a cymbal on the word production. Okay, all right, so we'll record John's vocals, and Ringo, you do your cymbal there on that bit there, and then we'll kind of even it all out in the mix and try and sort it out and tidy it up, kind of thing. They've done that before. They did that at the end of Michelle, a couple of duff guitar notes, and as the song was fading out, they recorded the correct guitar notes onto a different track, And so in stereo, you hear two sort of odd guitar notes in a separate channel from where the mistake was. But in mono, those notes would have nicely covered up the duff ones. And I believe that that's what's happened here. Okay? But 2017, their production, you can hear it. It's as plain as the nose on your face. Yeah. Okay. Right, we're at the end of side one now, folks. So I know that this video is going to go on a long time. I make no apologies for it, people. If you've got an hour, sit there, listen. Right, now during the dun 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 in that first instrumental part, okay, there are some tambourine and hi-hats going. One of those at 1 minute 24 seconds into the song, to be exact, one of those doesn't quite work, and it kind of, you hear it kind of flub slightly, so it's kind of thing, and it doesn't quite work. And then when you get the ba 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 bam ba bam after that bit, there's a honky kind of sound straight afterwards, ba 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 bam ba bam, like that, which shouldn't have been there. Just after the piano chords, okay. Somebody chopped the beginning of John Lennon's sentence off. Having been some days in preparation, John Lennon was absolutely sort of pernickety about his consonants. They had to come out, and you can hear him in, you know, before he's going to sing a song and he's going like that. And you'll notice even in his spoken voice that his consonants are all absolute. There's no messing with them. He would have pronounced that H in having been some days in preparation, and apparently on one of the anthologies you can hear the whole sentence, but for some reason or other, having been some days in preparation, is kind of the first part of have has been, or having has been chopped off by accident, and you'll never get it back. Been some days in preparation, but there must have been a demo version or something where he sang a guide vocal or something like that in a previous take, where it's there and it's on anthology apparently. Okay, I don't really listen to my anthologies as much as I should do, but there we go. Okay, 2 minutes 26 seconds to 2 minutes 27 seconds. Sounds like the main organ goes out of tune. Doesn't really. We're used to it. But the whole thing of all those tapes that have been chopped up and thrown up in the air and then sort of spliced together upside down and backwards and all kind of whatever, and then placed over the top of it, it sounds like everything's going out of tune, but it doesn't really. Okay, Within You, Without You. This is another track which I would say is actually on the new mixes, because there's not really, like with She's Leaving Home as well, there's not really very much that they could actually do to that to change it, because they were perfectly good recordings anyway. You know, it's perfectly simple and easy to make a lovely stereo mix, even in the 60s, with a string octet and a harpist. Okay, and the same with these Indian musicians here. You don't feel with either of them like they've tampered with that too much, but for some reason or other, and I don't know quite why or what the wherefores are, but for some reason the reverb and the whole atmosphere of Within You, Without You takes on a whole new kind of eeriness, and it is eerie. It's spooky. And talking of eerie and spooky, I'm going to turn the lights on. Beg your pudding. Now I can see myself now. Ah! Right, so Within You, Without You, beautiful, okay? There are a few very slight anomalies on there. I wouldn't necessarily agree with some of them that, you know, where they are anomalies, but during the long instrumental passage in the middle between the two verses, there's a part at 2 minutes 23 seconds, and I'll leave the link to this. Okay, you'll have to copy and paste it into a document, into a Word document or something if you want it like this. But you know, you can go and explore this website at your own heart's content. But beware, you'll be there. You'll spend hours and hours and hours on it. It'll become an addiction, and then you won't be able to listen to the records in quite the same way again. But apparently, at 2 minutes 23 seconds, there is a drop in or an edit where the drone instrument on the right hand side channel doesn't start naturally, and put that in quotes, but again, that is so slight. Okay, something that's a little less slight at 3:05, there's a part where the sitar kind of da 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 boom boom boom, and the sitar's doing these kind of answering phrases, and there's one particularly kind of climatic one where for some reason or other the note was cut short. Maybe someone tried to chop off a little bit of it where maybe it kind of twanged too much or something like that, but it's like that, and the sitar note is cut short. And something, oh, why did they do it? 2017, you know, 2017. Yes, I know that the mono mix hides it, but George definitely counted himself in, and he's going da, 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 1 2 da, 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 1 2, and you can hear that very, very clearly on the stereo version. I listen out for it every time I listen for that song, and for it not to be there, you know, what's wrong with it? He's counting himself in. That's what you do. That makes me cross, that one does. Right, When I'm 64. Okay, this was a track, this one was recorded at the end of 1966. Okay, had Strawberry Fields Forever, When I'm 64 and Penny Lane were kind of recorded round about the same time. I think Penny Lane was slightly later than the other two, but towards the end of 66, you're talking December-ish. Okay, by the time that it came round for the mixing, Paul had decided that he wanted it sped up. I think it was originally recorded in B flat, and it's been sped up 2 semitones so that Paul's voice sounds younger. That was, you know, it's one of the stories that, you know, someone said in the studio, oh, I think he wanted it to make it sound, you know, like he was a young person. But certainly his voice has got a very nasal quality to it throughout the whole song. And it's because it was sped up. By the time, you know, one of the things that I said in the last video was that, you know, I'm taking exception to this. Oh, the Beatles didn't care about the stereo mixes. The Beatles, you know, weren't even there in the room and stuff like that. Quite often they were done at the same time, but there were a few where they did kind of leave it towards the end. And When I'm 64 was one of a handful of songs that hadn't had a stereo mix as it was being made, as it were, and it was left towards the end. And George said, oh, we didn't speed it up that much, surely, did we? But they did. Okay, so that's the little story behind that one. Okay, I'm not bothering about a faint click at 2 seconds that was fixed in Yellow Submarine Remastered. Bass drum pedals can be heard squeak on the da-da-da-dum, bum bum. The first time that happens, apparently there's a bass guitar, there's a bass drum squeak, just about audible in this one, but again, that was partly fixed in Yellow Submarine Remastered, which means it was partly botched up, probably. Okay, we're used to the squeaks. We know they're there, we're used to it. Okay, the tubular bell phrasing in the I could stay with you. The first time it's played, it's ding dong, ding dong, ding. But second time it plays on the offbeats. I ding, could ding, and it sounds a bit bizarre, sounds a bit out of time, but it's not really. It's just playing on slightly different beats. Okay, sounds just a little bit weird. Okay, I could stay with you, ba-da, 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 ba-dum, and Paul sings an along with it. And when your lights have gone, little afterwards again. That was chopped off, I think. That was another one that's been corrected, but certainly it's very audible on this one. And also, give me your answer, fill in a form, mine forevermore. And on the word more, there's a snap of the finger. There's also a ha, like that, as Paul exhales breath. For some reason or other, he's found something funny. He's about to laugh. He stops himself. So, will you still need me? Will you still feed me? And you can hear him laughing there. Okay? And then, when I'm 64, who? And you can hear, again, the slight sort of flub of an edit. 4 goes dead straight afterwards, and then the who comes in as a second part. Again, absolutely tiny. And then just as the song fades, you know, the last note sort of dying away, there's a wee whistle, which again, I'm sure probably wasn't meant to be there. Okay. Fixed in Yellow Submarine Remastered, which means it won't be on the new thing. But, you know, listen to this. I keep saying, you know, or find an old 70s or 80s stereo version on vinyl. Listen to it. Right. Okay. Now, lovely Rita. Lovely Rita, meter maid. Lovely Rita, meter maid. And just as that finishes, the main kind of band and accompaniment comes into it. You can hear John singing, "Ah, Paul." And it's very loud in the stereo version, not in the new one, because the new one does like the mono one does, and it kind of gets hidden away, but it's very, very pronounced in the stereo version. And it supposedly covers an edit where the heavily reverberated Lovely Rita Meter Maids are kind of chopped. You can see that kind of diagonal sort of thing there. That's how the kind of direction in which they were cut to cut tape together. Okay, and what actually happens at that point is that you hear a pop in the left-hand channel. It's the moment that the R appears. But yeah, it's very, very, very noticeable, and especially the R Paul bit, you know. Halfway through, when it gets dark, I tow your heart away. About half a minute through, 0:32. After the word away, and just before standing by a parking meter, what's called a whip. Okay, don't ask me what makes a whip. Could have been a lead being pulled out, could have been a guitar string or a bit of a stray sound from an amplifier or something. But when it gets dark, I tow your heart away. Standing by a parking meter. You can hear it. Again, it's very clear in the original mixes, not very clear, nay, possibly removed in the 2017. Okay. Just before the shout of Rita, there's an odd sound just before, okay, about 1 minute 10 seconds, okay, and then they make the point here that it's probably Paul that's going woo in the background during the instrumental. The piano track, which hasn't finished, left a trail of hiss at the end of the solo, okay. but hadn't yet been faded down. So yeah. Now, again, I mean, this is something that just stands out to me all the time. But this is another one of the listens where you can hear the audio waveform. John or Ringo says, "You better believe it," or "I don't believe it," or something of that with "believe it" at the end of it, which kind of just before it goes into the bit of "Good morning, good morning." It says here, not counted as anomalies, but they keep getting mentioned. The sound effect of the wine bottle cork being popped. Had a laugh and over dinner, and you can hear a pop sound there. It's supposed to be there. It's a wine bottle effect, supposedly. And the chukka chukka sounds that John Lennon makes as vocal percussion, which are also intentional and not that uncommon, as we're told here. Right, okay, good morning, good morning. Now, this is one that I really don't think has worked and is best left alone. I mean, there are certain things that, yes, I do think, you know, they're beautiful on the new mix, and they really add, you know, like the Lucy in the Sky bits and the Day in the Life bits, which, you know, really kind of bring the song to life, and Within You Without You as well, which is eerily spooky and everything. But Good Morning, Good Morning, there was so much that is kind of buried in that mix, which perhaps shouldn't have been there to start with. Okay, when you erase tracks because it's a wrong take or something, and we did it wrong, but we want those 3 tracks there, but we don't want that on track 4, there's always the risk that there is going to be something still left there. Particularly, you can't take the way that, you know, if you had a completely huge reel-to-reel tape and you wanted none of the music on it, and you wanted to erase it as quickly as you could, you would, you know, just take a magnet to it, and basically, you know, the way that you demagnetize that tape would erase everything on it. Okay, you can't do that with, you know, if you've got 3 tracks that you want and a 4th track that you don't want. Okay, and if the record head is, you know, or the erase head, you know, isn't quite working as efficiently as it should be, and this happened quite a lot in Beatles recordings. Listen to, you know, something like Can't Buy Me Love, where there's, you know, the remains of an old guitar solo playing underneath the actual guitar solo that they wanted, or your blues again, where there's an old take that still shows through in places in the thing. And this is the same thing that's happened here. Okay, you've got some hand claps and you've got some drum beats there that were meant as a guide to the beat for the brass instruments when they were finally, you know, going to be put on there. They didn't get erased properly. Okay, they are there, they are on the right channel throughout the whole song. Okay, so you'll notice that after the cock crows, because it's supposed to be like the Kellogg's cornflake adverts of the 1960s and 70s, you know, where the cockerel is there crowing away, and then, you know, suddenly you get this breakfast cereal put in front of you, and that's what John's inspiration was. This good morning, good morning. It does sound like a Kellogg's cornflake commercial. I'm just about old enough to remember some of them from the early 70s at any rate, and, you know, that's what this is supposed to be there. And the minute that you get to Nothing to Do to Save His Life, the whole thing goes muddy. There's not a lot of separation going on at all, even in the new mix. In fact, it's worse in the new mix. So yeah, you've got a lot of that, a lot of an old drum track there that is kind of slightly, you know, out of point. I'm not going to go through all of these now because I'm getting bored now. Even I'm getting bored. Yeah, you can hear John shouting, "Giddy up, giddy up, giddy up, giddy up, giddy up." Okay, and where the good morning vocals fade out, there's an audible click as the vocals and brass stop. Just before this, a voice very quiet says turn it off on the right hand channel, which is not present on the original mono version. So that was something, that was an accident that was left on the first stereo mix, and you can hear it. Okay, that's right at the very end. Okay, now the reprise of Sgt Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. This is fantastic, and I make no point for making you sit through over an hour of me bleating on before I tell you this. This is absolutely fantastic, and it won't cost you a penny for me to tell you. In the introduction, okay, at the end of Good Morning, you've got all these sound effects of animals that are chasing after one another. Okay, and there's a hen clucking, which is then edited into the first notes of Sgt Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band Reprise. Okay, so it goes bow like that, and again, its most successful incarnation, I think, was in the mono version. I believe they kind of got that right. When they did it for the stereo version, it was a little bit sort of off. But just after that, you can hear John saying bye, which again, you know, it's there, you'll hear it, but there's also his look up bye is actually what's going on there. Okay. On the mono versions, just before the band start, there's more talking, including what sounds like John saying People City just after the cluck. And then there's another waveform where you can again go and listen to this on the website. Just click the word listen and it will take you to the audio file where you can hear this much clearer, because they've stripped it away and playing it in out of phase stereo. But it's also very clear in whatever stereo version you listen to, including this one. As the band is playing the first few bars of that, you can hear some talking underneath. And apparently it's Paul saying plectrum or playthrough. I think it's plectrum. John says, what? Then you can hear the word blister or the word twister, but I've got a feeling it's probably blister. John says, ah. Then Paul sings something high-pitched, sounds like pussycat. Just before they start to sing, we're Sgt Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, once again. You've got that conversation going on there. It's over on the left on the original stereo mixes. Okay, you might find it easier if you're listening on headphones to take one headphone away, and then you'll hear it. The first thing that you'll probably hear is the thing that says, where they say either blister or twister. Okay, but it is there. It is there. That little conversation is there, as is at the end, Sgt Pepper's Lonely, Sgt Pepper's Lonely, Sgt Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, woo! And just as that woo is going on, you hear John saying, Paul, could you hold my guitar for me? And it's brilliant. It is there. Okay, the kind of phrasing is like, Paul, could you hold my guitar for me? Paul, could you hold my guitar for me? And again, it's very, very faint, but it is there. Okay, there isn't a file where you can go and listen to that, but you can isolate it. I think if you were to play it in out of phase stereo, you probably hear it a bit better. Okay. And also, some of the things that Paul's singing towards the end of it, like "We'll be back, we're the band, the greatest band of all time." Okay, and that's heard slightly more clearly in the mono versions. Okay, now A Day in the Life. Again, you know, it's probably quite hard. There's, you know, great big conversations here that go on about you know, things like the alarm clock and stuff like that. The alarm clock was meant to be there. They put it there. It wasn't there as an aide memoire to the orchestra. It's because the alarm clock kind of coincides with the woke up, fell out of bed kind of thing. And was it Neil who's it? That's Mal Evans, the one of the roadies, was counting in the bars during the orchestral part, and he was asked to trigger an alarm clock at that particular moment, because that's where the strings stop, or the orchestral climax, as it were, stops, and then suddenly that clock goes off for woke up, fell out of bed. Okay, it's not an anomaly at all, and it wasn't there to kind of patronise a lot of professional musicians where they thought, you know, they can't even count 24 bars, because they can, and they don't need you know, someone to conduct them in that sense. Okay, you know, it's a regular part of the thing. If you look at music scores, you'll see places where maybe the oboes have to keep silent for 16 bars, then they join in, play something or other, and the musicians would be expected to count that, okay, and be looking at the conductor and be ready to come in, okay, and it's a skill, all right. So it wasn't to do with patronising musicians at all. It was there as a sound effect. It was meant to be there. Okay. Having said that, at the beginning, this is one of the anomalies that I spotted myself. 23 seconds, about a lucky man who made the grade. As the echo dies away. Okay. Again, very clear on this one. Not so clear on the new stereo mix. Okay. If it's there at all, I think they cut his note short again. Okay, because you can hear you can hear that reverb tailing off in quite a very bizarre way there. Okay, at 36 seconds, beg your pardon, there's a bit that goes dum 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 during I read the news of Hail Boy about a lucky man who made the grade. And though the news was rather sad, well, I just had to laugh. I saw the photograph, and I think it's during that I just had to laugh. I saw the photograph. There's a bass descending, but there's boom, 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 and there are three notes that kind of go down, 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 and the middle one is slightly out of place and out of time. But again, it's something that we're used to, okay? It doesn't fall exactly on the beat, kind of drags the beat down a bit slower. Maybe that's what they wanted. So I don't know whether or not that's an anomaly or not, okay? At 1 minute 43 seconds, this is just at the beginning of the first orchestral climax here. There are actually, I think they recorded about 4 tracks of different versions of that climax and put them all together. And just as a new track is about to come in at 1 minute 43 seconds, there's a click. And you can hear it in the right hand channel as the orchestra is doubling, is coming in. So maybe it's just, you know, trying to trigger off, because they had to try and get 2 tape machines to work in tandem to have enough tracks to record this orchestra over and over again on it. Yes, you can hear that Mal Evans counting the bars in there. You know, I think, again, if they wanted to hide it, then they would have hidden it, but they didn't hide it because they didn't want to hide it. It was all part of the soundscape, okay? And the fact that it's so heavily reverbed and gets more and more and more reverberant as he's counting higher and higher, it adds to the excitement. And if you sit there, I promise you, if you sit there and count those bars in your head yourself, by the time you get to 24, you'll notice an enormous amount of tension that's been building up inside you, and then you will suddenly, like that, bum, 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 work up, and you're like, oh my God, you know, because it is, you know, it's meant to build the tension up there, and the counting is part of what does that. In fact, if the counting wasn't there, you wouldn't get half that tension. Right channel at 2 minutes 17 seconds, a sudden intake of breath. Made the bus in seconds. Flat is really overpronounced like flat, but there's also some kind of clicky instrument that's being played, maybe a castanet or a maraca or something like that, that also kind of accentuates that sound at the end of flat, okay? And just before and after the vocals had a smoke, in the right hand channel, okay, it's as clear as day on headphones if you listen here, okay? It's even nearly clear on the new mix, okay? John is going crazy at that point in the background. He's mucking around, he's having a laugh, okay? And, you know, it says here, in a typically English way, just before and after the words had a smoke, Lennon starts talking and carrying on. Most audibly, a loud whoo just under the word smoke in the right hand channel. Okay, again, listen to it, you'll hear it. Okay, that's really the biggest anomaly in the whole of A Day in the Life. Okay. Finally, the edit at the end of the LP. Now, if you bought a cassette, this wouldn't happen. Okay. Neither does it happen on CD, but you just get a little bit of the burst of it. Okay. But if you leave your record playing, as the stylus hits the run out groove, you'll hear, I could find some other way, I could find some other way, I could find some other way. And also something like, I don't see any other way, I don't see any other way, I could find some other way, I could find some. And then there's a little bit of jabbering and sort of chattering each time that goes round, like, oh man. Okay, and some people have said that there was an unintended swear word, something me like a Superman, as being kind of interpreted by that sort of jabbering in between those repeat things, which I don't think was ever there. Certainly no one who was working with the Beatles has ever said, yeah, that's what they were saying. In fact, they've all denied it. And I think if they deny it, they've no reason to tell a fib, because, there were so many kind of sneaky little things that they put in there. Yes, some of their references did get them banned. I think it's Taiwan or somewhere like that. No, Singapore. I think it's Singapore. Watch Andy Hall's channel. They got a very heavily edited version of Sgt Pepper's, where it was obviously released after it was released over here, and in the Western world, but they got other songs that were put in the place, like Fool in the Hill and stuff like that, instead of the songs that had drug references in them and stuff like that. Now, although they've tried to play down the drug reference kind of thing there, no one has ever denied the fact that those drug references existed and that they were in the songs and that they were inspired by the use of drugs. Even Paul McCartney's Penny Lane was essentially an acid trip for him, So for them, if they'd wanted to put on a sneaky little jabbery little reference, you'd have thought that they would have, had no reason to deny it. Okay, because even A Day in the Life, for its references to Turning You On, and Holes in Blackburn, Lancashire, was supposed to be, someone said that it was holes in your arm after you've been injecting it or something like that. Really stupid and really bizarre, when in fact actually John could quite categorically produce the newspaper article. Sadly he read the Daily Mail, but there is the reference to the holes in Blackburn, Lancashire, potholes in the road, basically. That's what he's talking about. It's even the man from the motor trade, people misinterpreted as meaning an abortionist, which you could say meeting a man from the motor trade, but actually again, if John can write a song about a newspaper article, then so can Paul. That's the way that they used to compete with one another. If John can write a song with nonsense words in, so can Paul. And if Paul can have that orchestra climaxing at the end of A Day in the Life, which was Paul's baby, okay, John wrote the majority of the song, Paul's middle eight and the orchestral climax and stuff, and even the big piano chords at the end, that was all Paul's baby. And so, if Paul can do that, then why can't John make a whole song called Revolution 9 for the next main studio album that we're doing? And this was how they this was how they played. Okay, so She's Leaving Home was basically Paul writing a song about a newspaper article, and in that newspaper article, a girl had gone missing. Now, there's a book called A Hard Day's Right. I take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt, simply because they're wrong, quite clearly wrong, about certain things. And considering that it's a book about about the lyrics, the amount of lyric misquotations that they have in there is quite alarming, really. But they do produce the story and the family and the girl in the story. They've managed to somehow or other track her down, and this song was a real event that really happened. Okay, and so the man from the motor trade, we do have all kinds of synonyms for termination of pregnancies and stuff like that, but you've got to remember in those days it wasn't even legal. So She's Leaving Home was another one that kind of got banned, found itself being censored heavily by the BBC. So that's the kind of broadcasting world that we lived in those days. And yes, God bless you, ma'am, and all kinds of stuff like that. I did make a lot of notes about as I said, I made a lot of notes about when the songs were mixed. Okay, put it this way: A Day in the Life, the Beatles were there for the stereo mixing. Okay, so and they wanted to be there. And there are times where they were there for mono and stereo mixing, times when they were just there for the mono, times when they were just there for the stereo. It's just how it happened. It was not a deliberate case of, oh, you're just doing the stereo mixes, we don't need to be there for that, we don't care about them. They did care about them. Okay? The fact that they weren't exactly the same, in some cases, in some instances, might be down to the fact that, as I said before, when talking about applying reverb and things to things, there were a certain effects and things that could only be added after the event, which might have been different. The effects in Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is different from in stereo from the mono. Okay, basically, I think they forgot to add a little bit of phasing or flanging in the choruses of the stereo. Okay, they're not even really all that evident on the new stereo remix, but on the mono mixes, the effects are going bonkers. You know, it's like swiveling around in your head, especially on the long R's at the end of the choruses. Ah, like that, and it's, you know, it's almost over the top. Okay, and you know, George Martin would probably have been there saying, oh, surely they didn't do that for the mono version. let's play it down a little bit, chaps, kind of thing, you know, because George was always a bit worried about them abusing equipment and stuff like that. You know, they did all sorts of things like sticking sellotape on capstans to make the notes flutter and stuff like that. And, you know, if they'd been caught doing it, they would have been in a lot of trouble. So, yeah. Anyway, I have been bleating on now for what is like nearly 2 hours. Okay, I will try and edit this down slightly, but it's a 2 hour long video. I know some of you like those, okay, but others, you may wish to, I don't know, probably go to sleep or something like that, whatever, you know. I listen to certain YouTubers to help me fall asleep, and, you know, I'm quite happy if I'm one that you listen to help you fall asleep. Anyway, see you later. Bye.